Anurag, your host. I'm back with Laura from DC. Monday morning, she's agreed to being my guest. She is very kind. Right? Being a guest on a Monday morning, leaving her day job, that's really difficult. So, Laura, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Laura. We are elated to have you. So, Laura serves as the EVP and Chief Operating Officer at Educational Systems Federal Credit Union, based out of DC, the power capital of the country. And she assumed this role last year around January. So it's been almost more than a year. She's into this role, and she has like spent almost 3 decades almost dedicating her entire life into the credit union industry. She's a credit union veteran, is what I call. So she used to lead lending for Education Systems Credit Union for almost 8 years. Apart from what she does at Educational, she is a chairman of the MDDC Credit Union Association, the Maryland DC Credit Union Association. She sits on the board of Macuma, the Metropolitan Area Credit Union Association, and she was a part of a board of a QSO called Credit Union Auto Loan Network, aimed at increasing indirect members for auto loans. Right, so there's a bunch of things she does, and her role is very unique because we were just chatting prior to this podcast. It's very rare to find someone who's been a CEO of a small credit union, then moved to a bigger credit union, assuming the role of a chief of staff, then moving on to become a CEO. It's a very, I would say, unusual journey, but very interesting journey. I could relate a lot with her because right now, even I assume the same role. So, yeah, Laura, thank you for joining us. One quick nugget about her family. I just want to cover about that. She has 2 kids, right? And both of them do work for the government, right? So it's an amazing family. Laura, I'm glad to have you in my podcast. In case if I missed something, feel free to go and add, please.
So the only one thing I'd like to correct. So I'm no longer on the Makuma board, but I have been in the past.
Yes.
So that's a previous board that I was on. But no, it's been a really fun journey for the last 3 decades in the credit union world. So a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. 3 decades is a long to talk about. So we'll have a long interview today. I believe so. So now 3 decades, right? 3 decades is not less. It's pretty long. So what keeps you going, and what's your background? How has the journey been?
So my background, I come from a small town in Pennsylvania, and I went to school at the University of Pittsburgh got a degree in economics and business with the idea that I wanted to go into banking. Back in the mid 80s, though, when I moved to DC, it was very hard to find a job, and Anurag, you are way too young to even know about this, but there were finance companies that were throughout the country, and I worked for a finance company before getting my foot in the door at my first credit union, which at that point it was Pentagon Federal Credit Union. He brought me in, and that first step into credit unions, and for those of you out there that work in credit unions, you know this, it gets in your blood, and I couldn't ever think of doing anything else. You hear the mantra, people helping people, but it truly is what we do. And that really is what keeps me going. We do good things, and we do them for the right reasons. I like to, when I talk to people that are just considering entering the credit union world and taking their first job, I let them know that it's really easy to go home at night and know that we've done good stuff, even on the hardest of days. And there's hard days. But then getting up in the morning, it's super easy to jump out of bed and know what I'm going back to. So it's the right industry, and for the right reasons. We do good stuff. And that's really what keeps me going.
Absolutely. No, I think I have just 1/3 of your experience, or even lesser than that. But I mean, I used to work for big banks, right? I used to work for fintechs, or even the Fortune 500s. That's what my background is with Accenture. But when I got to know what credit unions stand for, what the movement is, I was so passionate. I was like, finally, I think I found something that both aligns to what I want to do, both in terms of my career passion and more of a community involvement. It has both sides of it, and I mean, I absolutely love what I do, and I would say, thank you to the entire credit union industry, people like you who have made this movement strong and resilient than ever.
Yeah, it's truly a community, and it, you feel totally embraced. Yeah, you don't feel like you have competitors out there when you're talking to people that work for other credit unions, and we might be competitors. We probably are competitors in a lot of cases, but the collaboration and the support that you find in the industry is huge and strong, and it really makes me love what I do.
Absolutely, that's the best thing, right? I mean, that concept of again people helping people. That's not what you get in other commercial setup, right? It's actually what credit unions live by it. It's not just what we talk about, but we live by it. So that's great. Absolutely,
Yep, I agree.
absolutely. So Laura, with your 3 decades long experience, right? 3 decades is huge. Uh, Maybe I would want to ask more on your pick your brain on your leadership style and philosophies, because every single leader has different leadership styles, right? So what is your?
So I like to think of myself as a servant leader, and you hear that a lot. Um, but I really honestly believe that I am not successful without the people around me being successful. And so it's from my perspective, I think it's really important to make sure that anyone who works with me, that my role is to make sure that they have the tools that they need, they have the coaching and the mentoring that they need. I need to give my direct reports and their direct reports the tools to be successful. My
Absolutely.
job is that much easier when that's the case. So, that's really how I think of myself. When you and I were talking, you mentioned that you see yourself as an empathetic leader, and I think that's part of it. I
Yep.
do. I mean, Lord knows there's times when it's hard, and but I see that as well. The other thing I like to think of is, being a leader doesn't mean being, having a title. And I tell a lot of our new employees when I chat with them that their goal is to be there and help and do whatever it is that they need to do to help their supervisor be successful, and that will then put them in a position to learn more of these leadership skills. And a leader is simply someone that has followers, somebody that has people that look to them to guide them. And so it has nothing to do with a title. When I was thinking about talking to you about this today, I realized that probably for a very long time before I even knew it, I was a leader. And I think a lot of people are like that. Even going back to school days, and you have friends that look up to you and are looking for advice and guidance on whatever. But I think this is how you start developing those leadership skills.
Exactly.
So that's kind of me, I think.
Sure, Laura. I mean, I think of it the same thing, because, I mean, I think talk about this in every single episode, that you do not need a title, do not need number of years of experience under your belt to prove yourself as a leader, right? It's always what you bring onto the table. It doesn't really matter, how junior are you or how senior are you in the food chain. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, I feel confident hearing the same thing every single day from my podcast guests, and it's not much different that you think of Laura. I mean, thank you for letting us know, right? Now let's talk about your journey, right? Now again, my audience would want to know this: from being CEO of a small credit union to moving to another large-size credit union, mid-size credit union, being the chief of staff. I mean, no, I think doing lending. Firstly, small credit union CEO, then lending, then chief of staff, then now running the entire operations, right? So Laura, how has the transition happened? Because you've changed your role so much, right? You're not a by the book leader, I would say. You're not a marketing leader, you're not a lending leader, but you are a credit union leader who understands the ecosystem end to end because you've done everything almost together, right? So how does that fit in? And if you want to talk about that.
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to, because it is kind of unique. And it's been interesting, in retrospect, you go, wow, it's definitely been a journey. So I mentioned that I started my career at Pentagon Federal Credit Union. And while I was there, I had my children that we've mentioned. So it's been a long time. But anyone who, has gotten married and had kids are expensive. And so ultimately, I was looking for another job to help with those daycare expenses at the time, and saw this advertisement in the paper, which is kind of what we did back then, and it was for a credit union manager job. Well, I was in lending at the time, and I'm like, okay, I can be a manager. I can be a branch manager. I can do this. It's a little different from what I was doing. Well, it turned out not to be a branch manager role, but credit union CEOs are sometimes, particularly for smaller credit unions, are referred to as credit union managers. And so it was really a credit union CEO job at National Geographic's credit union, which was so cool. But it was the last thing. Yeah, it was the last thing that I expected, though. I never had a vision of being a credit union CEO and running, an entire organization. And no matter how big or small a credit union is, there's a lot to it. I mean, it goes from the member side to the accounting to the lending. I mean, it's the whole thing. And so it was a small credit union. It was 5 years of my life that were probably some of the best years because I got to touch it all and I got to do it all. But again, it was a small credit union and I still had those kids and I still needed more money. So, so I moved on from there to be a CEO. I think my title was Executive Vice President, COO of Department of Veterans Affairs. And then eventually from there, to Educational Systems Federal Credit Union, where I stepped into the role as Vice President of Lending when the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer that was in that role at the time was moving into the CEO role. And I have to give that man props. So that's Chris Conway, who was here as CEO from 2007 until 2022, I think is when he retired. And Chris gave me so many opportunities here to do different things. Like I said, I came in as Vice President of Lending because he needed someone in that role. But through his support and through his guidance, I eventually moved into the role that I'm currently in. And since then, I have had responsibilities for lending and collections and human resources, facilities. I've built branches. I've got now retail under me as well with branches and the contact center. I've got operations under me. I've got risk management. So I've done it all. And it's been a journey, but it's been absolutely amazing. And I couldn't, if I didn't have someone that believed in me and that trusted me, I'm not sure that I would have had the opportunity. So I've been very lucky in that respect.
I would say you're lucky when you started your career with a credit union that was serving National Geographic members. That's like wow. I mean, it's so cool, right? I mean, I have a legit question. Did you get free passes to go around the world when people click pictures for National Geographic? Did you get free passes on that?
I got a lot of stuff when I was there. So one of my best stories, my daughter at the time I think she was in kindergarten, and I took her to work with me one day, and it was, like I said, a small credit union, but it was in their headquarters, and our offices were in the basement, like a lot of small credit unions are that are in their sponsors' locations, and so right next door to where our offices were was what was a laboratory for National Geographic, where at the time they were developing what they ended up calling their critter cams, where they would actually build these cameras that they would put on animals. Some of them went in the sea, some of them were on other animals, but they came over, they got my daughter at age 5, took her over to their lab while I was working and showed her everything and sat down with her and explained it all. She's loved National Geographic ever since. But I mean, really cool stuff at National Geographic. Cool people, really, really neat.
Sounds good. So from there to being a chief of staff to CEO, it's a journey, right? And
it's a journey.
It's a huge journey. It's a huge journey, changing multiple roles, wearing multiple hats. I think that's what talks about typical agility, right? You're not tied to one single role. You can change your role, change things very quick, fast. This is great, Laura. I think my audience would love to hear about your journey. I'm sure it's a very unique one, right? And obviously, being through the years, I mean, again, the chief of staff role to CEO, the transition is really difficult. It's not easy, right? And plus, being a female leader across the journey, obviously you become CEO. You've been CEO from day one, right? And now we are again back to C-level. You interacted with board, you worked with the entire credit unions. Being a female leader, Laura, specifically, what are the different challenges that you faced? And if you would want to share some specific nuggets, what are the do's and don'ts? Like, for example, right, for young female leaders, it will be really helpful. And I'm sure the young female leaders would love to get in touch with you via LinkedIn and reach out for mentorship. I hope you're okay with that.
Oh, 100%. So I will tell you, so you go back to the whole National Geographic CEO position. I was just surprised to find myself in that role, and you go into it with knowing that you can't fail. So part of it, at least for me, was I needed to succeed at this job, and it was as a woman and as part of just who I am. I cannot fail. And but you also go into it, at least I did, with that imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here, which makes you work even harder to prove that you do. I was very lucky that I had a number of women CEOs from the DC area that reached out to me and really guided me and gave me a hand through a lot of the challenges that I was going through. In addition, a couple of them reached out to me to get me involved with, at the time, it was the DC Credit Union League. And they helped to get me on the board of that league to really help me experience and get to know a lot of people in the credit union industry here in the DC metro area. That was a huge help. And I share that because I think I now have a responsibility to do the same for other women leaders. And we have a lot out there right now. We have a really good younger generation that's coming up that I'm convinced are going to do great things to help to continue to move the credit union industry forward. But that was hard, and that was important. For me, a lot of it was just sitting back and listening and paying attention and learning about who I could be and what I should be doing. It was scary and it was hard.
Yeah, I mean, when you have zero margin of error, you cannot fail. It's yeah, for young female leaders or for the matter for any young leader, it's overwhelming. I mean, when I started my journey leading teams, maybe 5 years back, I didn't have any clue, but yeah, it's like with the journey you get matured, and your probability of success increases. That's the same thing that happened with you. That's great, right? And I mean, I want to ask you one question, since you are at the heart of the credit union movement in DC, right?
Right.
I keep, I keep on hearing one single thing, that credit unions are still investing money, time onto building branches, right? While the world is moving somewhere else. I mean, you're competing essentially against the fintechs and the neobanks of the world, or even you're competing large banks or large community banks, right? So, how does a branching strategy work, right? Are you a huge proponent of building new branches? Do you think that this is the future, or is it hybrid?
So I think there's always going to be a place for branches. The thing is that you don't need a branch on every corner anymore. I think those days are long gone. We are continuing to see the traffic into branches, but it's not at the level that it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And there's also this rumor, I'll call it a rumor, that young people don't have a need to go into branches, and that's just not true. So what we find and what the research shows is that the younger generations, the Gen Zs, they still want to have access to a branch. They're not going to go in all the time, but when they need something or they need some advice, they want to be able to have access. So for us, and I can't speak for everybody else, but for us, we are developing a strategy where we want branches. They're going to be smaller. There's going to be a lot more technology in the branches than no more teller lines. We've got pods, and we don't have tellers so much as we have a member service representative who can assist, whether it's a financial transaction or it's counseling, it's advice. So people want someplace to go, and they want to know that you're there. So for us, it's putting a branch someplace where our members are, where we know that they're going, where there's going to be a lot more traffic. We're not just going to put it, across from the school board anymore, because we are an education-based credit union, and that did used to be the idea. But it's going to be in a retail location where we know our members are going, and it's convenient, and our hours probably aren't going to be as significant as they used to be either. Our Saturday hours, may no longer exist sometime in the future because they don't need to. But yeah, there is still a place for branches. They just look a little bit different, and they're not as numerous, but I don't think they're going away anytime soon.
Absolutely agree, right? I mean, I was reading a recent report, I was forgetting by Cornerstone or by Jack Henry. I mean, I must be just mistaken, but still, Gen Zs are more, attracted to branches than ever. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is not a myth. This is reality. Exactly what we talked about. More than millennials, Gen Zs. I mean, I call myself a zillennial. You have a kid who's 30. You know that, Laura. We are like mix of the millennials and Gen, right? Because
Yep.
we are not the true blood millennials, what we say, because we've grown up with Gen Zs. We have a lot of characteristics of Gen Zs. So I think, yeah, this is absolutely true, that we want to have, at least I want to have a branch that's nearby my locality. Might not, I don't want to hop into the branch. I don't remember the last time I went into a branch, honestly. It's maybe more than a year. But still, if I want to go and do some important transactions, maybe talk about my mortgage, talk about my auto loan, talking about,
Mm-hmm.
even a personal loan, right? I would want to walk into a branch and talk to a rep and understands my options, than just trusting and applying for a mortgage online. It doesn't really work that way, right? So yeah, definitely for critical purposes you need a branch, and this has to be the way forward. It can, I mean, the fintechs might acquire much more consumers now. They might have much more checking account right now, but in longer run, there is need for the credit union movement, and we are growing very strong. So good news to that.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, and the other thing, I mean, particularly when you talk about fintechs, so most consumers these days, and I say consumers because it's not, it's not our members, it's everybody, have more than one financial relationship. And so you want to have that hometown or that community relationship that you can walk into, and you can talk about that first car loan or that first mortgage, or I'm having a problem. What can you do to help me? You want to have that. And then, as you do get more savvy, it does become a lot easier to sit there on your phone and go, oh, well, I'm going to take out, I need to take out a loan, or I want to get a credit card. But you've already got an established relationship. Maybe I'm going to look there first. And so hopefully that's what credit unions can do, and community banks for that matter. We've got those big players out there, the Chase and the Citi and the Wells Fargo. Hopefully nobody's going to Wells Fargo these days, but that's a whole nother story. But, you've got the big players out there and the big names that you hear, but I want somebody that I know has my best interest at heart, and I am convinced that the big players don't have my best interest at heart. Now, when I've got my 800 credit score and I'm making, $500,000 a year and I need a credit card, well, maybe I'll sit there and go to them for that. But in the meantime, as I am growing up in learning how to manage my own finances as a young adult, I want some place that can hold my hand and can help guide me.
Absolutely right. So that is so relatable, and the branching strategy is here to stay. The branches are here to stay. They are going.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just going to look a little bit different and a little smaller, probably.
Yeah, might be the establishment will be smaller. It will be automated teller management. There'll be a lot of ATMs, ITMs everywhere. But yes, you still need a brick and mortar presence, is what I say. A brick and mortar presence.
Agree.
To go and walk and get your first auto or a mortgage. Absolutely, that's much needed. And credit unions excel in that. To let you know, my friends, right, who are, Gen Zs or early millennials, I think 80% of us have our auto loans through a credit union now. So that's a sign of relief that no one is going away. We still trust in the movement, and credit unions are still the first reckoning power. When we think about auto loans, there is no one else.
Yeah, I agree. And you're seeing membership grow in credit unions. Well, you're seeing a consolidation of credit unions for a multitude of reasons. You are seeing membership growth in credit unions, and that's awesome.
Exactly. Laura, I know that you're really busy. You've got some time for us. I want to ask you one parting question in the interest of time. Yep. So, Laura, with your 3 decades of experience, you've seen the entire movement change, transform, get disrupted, right? In short, right? M&As, M&As will happen. M&As are happening, will happen. Acquisition of credit unions by banks, or the other way, credit unions acquiring banks. That's a trend that's happening. But AI coming into picture, that's a huge game changer, I would say. Followed by rates, right? All of us know next. It might not happen that the rates get slashed right away. We have to wait for Q4, right? There is pressure on margins, pressure on interest income specifically. So where do you think, Laura, is the ecosystem right now? What are the maybe challenges that you foresee that the ecosystem as a whole might have, will have, and net, what are your 2 cents on where we are and where we're heading to?
So I think that I think primarily the challenges that the system is experiencing tend to be regulatory based, and we have a lot of things potentially coming down the pike, a lot of regulations that credit unions have to abide by, regardless of size, and a lot because of things that the credit unions didn't do. Going back to the earlier in the 20s or in the 2000s. Credit unions have always been the good guys, but we have to comply. And so regulations are the challenge. with that, we're also seeing some challenges for some credit unions with liquidity and with lending this year. With rates as high as they've been. It's good and bad. Our margins are a little bit better than what they had been when rates were so low several years ago. But at the same time, it makes it a lot harder for our members to be able to afford their loans and to make their payments. So I think, again, it's economics, and you get your ebbs and flows. We're going to see rates come back down, probably not to the levels that they were, but it's always about managing the margins.
I hear you absolutely. So this is very well taken, and from a veteran, these are words of wisdom. I think everyone would love to hear. So thank you, Laura, once again for being my guest today. I appreciate this time.
Well, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.